Hey guys, what's going on? Paul here. Welcome back to another Cardano video. Today I'm joined by Pi, who's been on a few times before, and Dan from Sundaeswap to go through a bit about what's happened. They have launched yield farming, but also what I want to dive into today is a bit on Hydra and what's the latest on it. We've seen a demo from Sundaeswap previously. Find out what the latest is and where things are going in the future, as well as they have some Catalyst proposals in. So guys, you're very welcome. Dan, welcome to the channel for the first time, and Pi, welcome back.
Yeah, thanks for having us on. Dan, you want to introduce yourself real quick?
Yeah, sure. So for those of you who don't know me, my name is Dan Gonzalez. I joined Sundaeswap late last year, back in December. And since then, we've relaunched our DEX with our V2 UI. We've also launched our yield farming program recently. So happy to see both those go out. And it's been quite an exciting ride so far. And we've got lots of great stuff in the pipeline.
Yeah, and Dan works on the product side of things. We've been really glad to have him. Since then, we've also, you referred to us as Sundaeswap. We've rebranded a little bit as a company, as Sundae Labs. So, obviously the DEX is still our #1 priority and what we put the bulk of our efforts into. But we have been, branching out. We have a governance platform. We have a rewards platform. We've done a little bit of consulting. And so Sundae Labs just kind of captures that broader picture for us that we're starting to expand into.
Yeah, I suppose we touched on it there. Yield farming is now live. It's something that was missing for a while on Sundaeswap, and now that it's back, do you want to give the high level just on how that's working, and then we'll get into Hydra and everything else?
Sure. So we launched with yield farming that ran for 6 months. And when that ended, we didn't renew it, which confused a lot of people. But from our standpoint, it was kind of the essential moral decision to make. Because we didn't have any form of governance live, and us making arbitrary decisions about how to spend the community treasury really didn't sit right with us. And so even though it meant kind of a small decline in TVL as people moved on to where the next rewards were coming from, we kind of stuck by that decision until we could have a proposal that the community could vote on and decide on kind of the material facts. And so we held a vote for that about a month and a half ago that passed unanimously. And so we were really excited about that. And then we held another vote that decided on what the initial emission rate should be. The Sundae token holders decided on, at least for right now, a emission rate that will spend 75% of the treasury over the next 4 years. So it's pretty aggressive, trying to kind of recapture some of that attention from people. So the way this yield farming system works is, first, there's a daily emission of Sundae tokens. Right now, it's 444,115 Sundae tokens per day. And every 30 days, there will be a governance vote to update that either up or down. Or you could have like an emergency vote out of band to update it, if there was some big event that we felt we needed to cut back emissions, or not we, but the Sundae community. And so we'll see that evolve over time as kind of the Sundae token holders make that decision of how aggressive do we want to be with the Sundae token and the treasury that we, and throughout this whole conversation, when I say we, I mean the DAO, that we have available to us. In terms of how yield farming actually works, it's fairly simple. So first, Sundae token holders vote on which pools receive rewards. So you can lock up your Sundae tokens and allocate that across different pools. So for example, you could say, I want the ADA Sundae pool to receive 40% of the rewards. I want the JED IUSD pool to receive 10%. I want the ADA WMT pool to receive 10%. And however you want to allocate that, in particular, what you think is strategically advantageous for the protocol. The idea is that Sundae token holders are incentivized to make good decisions for the protocol and for what is kind of strategically advantageous for Sundae's health as a whole. And so putting that control of where we incentivize those rewards and where we try to draw liquidity is kind of a very democratic commitment to that democratic ideals that underpin blockchain a lot of the time. So once you've done that, you don't earn any rewards for that other than kind of participating in governance and having that direct and immediate control over the Sundae protocol. liquidity providers can lock up LP tokens for the qualifying pools and earn kind of their proportionate rewards of the emitted Sundae rewards. Right now, only the ADA Sundae pool is qualifying, but there's an ongoing governance vote to adjust some of those thresholds. Kind of the DAO decided to start very conservative and then increment those up to match once we see real world behavior. And so anything could change between now and when that vote happens, but assuming that vote passes and assuming the kind of current delegations don't change dramatically, we'll start seeing the ADA Sundae pool, the ADA WMT pool, and the JED IUSD pool all receiving Sundae rewards. And so that would be really cool. And then, every day at midnight UTC, we take a snapshot. 2 hours later, we calculate the rewards based on that snapshot. We wait that 2 hours to make sure the chain hasn't rolled back and changed the results. And then we emit rewards, and there's no 30-day lockup right now. The DAO could vote to institute one, but right now it's every day you get rewards, you can claim them. So it's been really popular with people so far. Dan, did you have anything you wanted to add about that?
Yeah, I think just high level, the key differentiator for us in like Pi mentioned, in returning to the world of yield farming has been to really bring actual utility to the Sundae token, right? You'll see a lot of protocols launch and they're like, our token is a utility token, right? It's for governance. Well, we wanted to really bring that to the forefront and make that part of the yield farming chain of activities.
Yeah, it's good to see yield farming back. It definitely influences how much TVL you get, because obviously people are looking to get the maximum out. They want to use the DEX for trading, but they also want to pull extra rewards out where they can. And the new vote, I had a look at it there earlier on. I think it's a good direction I like the one, now not to influence people's votes, but they should go and look at it themselves. I like the one that would have the ADA Sundae pair is the default. So then it gives everything else more of a chance to get included then for getting rewards. Because look, if someone's holding a big amount of Sundae, then potentially they're going to put all their weight behind the ADA Sundae pool, because that's going to, in the short term, that's going to help them more. But I think it's better for the protocol if there's a wider distribution of the tokens in terms of more pools being incentivized. It brings in new people into it because they want to earn rewards, and in turn that's good for Sundae token holders. But good to see utility for the token too. So moving on, last year, I think at Rare Bloom or Evo, you guys done a demo that caused a bit of a stir, which was Hydra. And people expected Hydra to launch within a week or so after that. But obviously, we know things like that don't just happen. But what's the latest on Hydra and Sundaeswap?
Yeah, so it was at Rare Bloom. We showed off kind of an intermediate snapshot of some R&D that we were doing. So basically what happened was last year around consensus, a little bit before consensus, we started building out what would it look like to run Sundaeswap on Hydra, kind of getting really familiar with the protocol, really familiar with the software that it takes to run it. A tidbit that I'm really proud of is as far as I know, we were the first team in the world, the first people in the world to run smart contracts on Hydra, because we got that working one day and we messaged the Hydra team and we're like, hey, look, this is cool. We got this running. And they're like, we haven't even tested that yet. We've just been running we've been testing it with sending ADA back and forth, but we haven't run smart contracts. So it was really cool to, be trailblazers in that way. And we worked really hard to get this proof of concept for showing what the potential speed of Hydra is, executing swaps. And really the big advantage of Hydra is, and we'll go deeper into this in a minute, but what we were trying to show off is that you can take your existing smart contracts almost unchanged and, and move them over to Hydra and just run them directly. And you can take a lot of your existing off-chain infrastructure that deals with UTXOs and deals with querying, a sequence of transactions and things like that, and move it directly to Hydra. And so it's really that, the kind of mathy techie term that's used is isomorphism, that kind of one-to-one correspondence between what you've already built for Cardano and what's possible on Hydra, was what we were trying to show off and what was really exciting to us, in addition to its speed. What we tried to emphasize at the time and ever since, and never quite seems to sink in, is that, you know, it was just one step in our R&D journey. It's not something that we planned to take and go to production with. I don't think it would be appropriate to go to production with. So, you know, if you think there's space for it on this show, I'd be happy to give kind of a layman's explanation of what Hydra is and what it isn't, what it's good for and what it isn't good for. Do you think that would be good?
Yeah, I think that's a good approach. I think lots of times we hear that Hydra is going to do absolutely everything. Hydra, it's nearly become, people say Bitcoin fixes this and Cardano Hydra fixes this is the term used sometimes. And it'd be good to get an understanding. And maybe we should have started there, but just of what Hydra is or potential use cases for it and what it could actually be used for or where it fits.
Absolutely. So I'm going to go ahead and share my screen.
Yep, there we go.
So I get to do one of these whiteboard videos, which the Cardano community loves. So Hydra is fundamentally a way to say, maybe everybody in the world doesn't need to know about your transactions, right? So if I'm playing a poker game, it's important that you and I, who may not trust each other, and when there's money on the line because we're betting, be able to have confidence in these results, in the, you know, recording every hand that's dealt, et cetera, et cetera. But maybe the whole world doesn't need to know every hand that was dealt as we play out that smart contract interaction. And so Hydra is really built to handle this peer-to-peer use case. And so what happens is a number of what are called Hydra heads will open up. On the layer one, they will deposit some funds into a smart contract. So I'm going to express that these are kind of block or like UTXOs. You know, I have 100 ADA, and I, you know, I spend 50 ADA, and it's now held by a smart contract. And this is the Hydra smart contract. And you can come along and also spend, you know, maybe 75 ADA into that smart contract. And so now that smart contract is holding a total of 125 ADA. And then that is kind of initiating the Hydra head. And from that point on, you and I can talk back and forth. I can say, hey, I'm going to send you 1 ADA. And you're going to say, hey, I'm going to pay you back for lunch. I'm going to send you 5 ADA. Or we're going to play a game of poker and I'm going to, you know, I'm going to bet 15 ADA that off-chain I'm paying into a smart contract, quote unquote. And this is really just in the communication back and forth between us. And on the layer one, there's no transactions, right? We're not taking up any block space. We're not broadcasting the results of any of this. This kind of just sits there dormant and leaves room in future blocks for other transactions. And because this is peer-to-peer and we don't need to get consensus among every stake pool operator, it can be really fast, right? Blocks are on average every 20 seconds to give time for the different stake pool operators to communicate with each other. But if it's just us two that need to reach consensus, we can say, I can send you the transaction and, you know, 10 milliseconds later, you can say, cool, confirmed. And so it's that back and forth that, and that kind of limiting of the scope that makes Hydra super, super, super fast. And then when we're done with our kind of, you know, auction or our poker game or whatever we're using Hydra for, this smart contract up here gives a protocol, a mechanism where I can say, hey, look, here is the last snapshot. At the end of all of this, I had 25 ADA and Paul had whatever the difference is, so 100 ADA. And I can provide that snapshot that has both of our signatures. And the smart contract says, okay, Paul, can you provide a later, sorry, Paul, can you provide a later snapshot? And Paul comes along and says, oh, okay, actually, I have one that, you know, is 10 minutes after this one where it shows that Pi has 10 ADA and I have 115 ADA. And he was trying to erase part of the history by providing an old snapshot. And so then the smart contract says, okay, Pi, do you have anything to contest that? And it goes back and forth like this until basically nobody responds with a later snapshot. And then once it kind of expires, it pays this out. So the 10 ADA would go to me, and the 115 ADA would go to Paul's address. So it would it's called fan out. And the really cool thing about this is that because each of these snapshots is signed by everybody involved, the worst that can happen is that me and Paul can conspire to lie and to sign a snapshot that isn't true, that didn't have transactions, but both of us have to agree to that. So Paul and I could say, hey, we're going to sign this, crafted snapshot to give 125 ADA to Paul, but I have to sign off on that, and it's my money. So at worst, we can conspire to steal our own money, which doesn't sound that bad, right? And so for these use cases, for these kind of business to business or peer to peer use cases where you have high frequency transactions, Hydra is really good. And especially the engineering behind Hydra is really good. The team that has been building the node and the smart contracts are world-class. I've been nothing but impressed by their output and the kind of care and subtlety that they put into their building. What Hydra is not good for, though, is anything where that assumption is violated, where the Hydra head is holding money that does not belong to the head operators, right? So if we tried to run, we spun up, even 5 Hydra heads, one run by Sundae, one run by Paul, one run by Bank of America, one run by Drip Drops, and one run by IOG, right? And we said, okay, we're going to, everybody else can deposit their funds into this Hydra head. We're going to execute DEX transactions peer-to-peer among us. And so you can get super fast transactions, but it's 5 people, 5 organizations that are in control of potentially billions of dollars, right? It basically dramatically reduces your Nakamoto coefficient. And so all it would take to steal potentially billions of dollars locked in this smart contract is for these 5 entities to collaborate and say, hey, we're going to take a reputational hit. We're going to, maybe face criminal charges, but we're going to, run away to the Bahamas with this $2 billion, right? And so that security profile is not what crypto users have come to expect, right? And so building and deploying a DEX or like a large pooled many user protocol on Hydra isn't great. Does that make sense so far? I'll pause there before I kind of talk about the next thing.
Yeah, that makes sense. And I suppose the thing of having to open and close the Hydra head when new funds come into it has always been the blocker in my mind for being able to open it up. This is interesting that you could set up all these heads. Every time you put funds in and out, does the head or the overall head have to close and reopen? Even if you had all of these entities, I'm thinking if they represented the smart contract and you put it out to 50, so your Nakamoto coefficient then is higher.
Yeah, so there's in version 1, I think it's, the funds that you have available is everything that you locked up at the start. And then to get anything out, you have to close the head and kind of dissolve it all. But there's nothing fundamental to the protocol that requires that. You could allow kind of incremental commits and incremental withdrawals. Totally fine. There's nothing from a protocol standpoint that you have to be really careful about how rollbacks are handled and things like that. But fundamentally, it's all the same. The big problem with this is that the reason that this stays so fast is because it's so few people. So if you expand it up to 50 people, it's going to be slightly faster than the Cardano network, but basically just as slow. So you don't get a lot of benefits from Hydra if you have a 50-person Hydra head, right? And so that trade-off, as you start to kind of push the Nakamoto coefficient versus to like increase the security of the funds versus like pulling back for the speed, they're just at like kind of a fundamental tension. I like to give some examples of what Hydra is really good for, and that's things like auctions, where you're going to say, hey, we're going to lock this NFT and 10 million ADA from a bunch of different people in the Hydra smart contract and open the Hydra head with those people. And then we have like millisecond bidding, where you're bidding and outbidding people in instantaneous finality until somebody wins that auction, and then you close the auction with whoever owns it at the end. You could build things like the tulip bidding system. So there's this whole system where the way that flowers are sold, I think it's out of Denmark, is there's this big room of people that are all like kind of doing a micro auction on lots of tulips that were grown, of like which ones are prettier and stuff. So you could build something like that globally on Hydra. You could build an ad distribution network on Hydra where a website that's serving ads transmits to kind of a small Hydra head with 10 different ad providers saying, hey, if you get back to me in the next 100 milliseconds with a bid, then I will serve your ad and settle instantaneously with the high confidence and the like programmability of the Cardano blockchain. But among that kind of small instant finality, high frequency use case of like just 10 businesses doing business together. So Hydra, I think, is really great for those.
Okay, and in terms of, so obviously your R&D on this side was starting out with Sundaeswap and the DEX. Is there any form of Hydra can be applied to adapt like a DEX or lending, borrowing, or something else?
Yeah, so one thing that became really clear to us as we did this R&D is that the engineering and the ideas behind Hydra are really fantastic. And we started to see Hydra not just as one protocol, not just as like, oh, okay, this is it, this is how it works, there's no other way it could work, but as a design space where the protocol that is published in that paper and is being implemented by the IOG team is one point in that design space. And you could make different trade-offs and you could substitute out different components for your use case. And so we started to see this cloud of possibilities surrounding Hydra. And what we've been ideating on and now working on for the last, since then, is a protocol that we're calling Gummy Worm. It's kind of tongue-in-cheek. The candy that is most like a Hydra was, originally we were going to call it like Gummy Octopus, but that didn't roll off the tongue. And so Gummy Worm is kind of the best name that we've come up with. And what it does is it uses Hydra as a component. It uses a lot of the engineering that went into Hydra as the building block. So we don't have to reinvent the wheel for really fast isomorphic execution for a Cardano layer 2. And all it does is basically modularizes it so that you can use Hydra for the execution, but the custody of funds is handled differently. And how exactly that all works and how you penalize bad actors and how you do contestation periods and stuff like that, that's all like an active ongoing R&D effort and something that we'll basically probably publish research papers on eventually. But in the interim, we're building up the components that we need for that protocol. And so, this was kind of where we were at last October, is like, okay, Hydra isn't the right use case, but we can see a world where there's this Gummy Worm protocol that meets our needs and doesn't, involve rebuilding a bunch of stuff that has already been built and built really well. And then, we realized, hey, we have a lot of promises that we need to deliver on.
Okay, sorry, we had a bit of a cut there, and Pi, you're back with us now. So you were talking about after October and the promises that were kind of their expectations, and what was next?
Yeah, so as I was saying, we reached this point in our R&D, And then we put it on the back burner to deliver on some of these other promises that we had, like our V2 UI, governance, our rewards platform, things like that. And a couple months ago, we felt like we had delivered on some of those. And so we picked back up development and R&D on Gummyworm. And we have a full team of 3 engineers working on it full time. And it's progressing fairly well now. So that's kind of where we are today in building out that protocol. And while we were doing this, we realized that there were at least 2 components that we could contribute back to the Hydra protocol, things that we were going to have to build ourselves anyway, but that would benefit everybody. And so those are, we've actually contributed, we've submitted 2 Catalyst proposals for those components. So Dan, maybe you want to talk about those a little bit?
Yeah, sure. So yeah, we've got 7 proposals total in Catalyst this round, which we're super excited about. But the 2 that pertain to Hydra specifically are our Hydra ledger-only mode proposal and our Hydra transaction stream plugin proposal. So the ledger-only mode is really intended to be a cheap-to-maintain ledger for Hydra, right? To allow for experimentation and other potential use cases that wouldn't be possible with a full-on, connected Hydra node. Okay, and the second proposal is the Hydra transaction stream plugin, which is really focused on the observability and allowing developers to see what's happening inside of the Hydra node to provide a level of transparency and to really understand what's going on there.
Yeah, and both of these on the technical side are really about making Hydra useful, like we said with Gummyworm, as a component in larger systems. And so we're really excited. We're going to have to build those for ourselves anyway. And so if we're doing it on a shoestring startup budget, we're going to build the minimal that we need for our work. And it's probably not going to be super useful to a lot of other people. But with a little bit of Catalyst funding, we can really make that a powerful contribution back to the Cardano community, which we think will help everybody. And one thing I've said a lot in interviews in the past is a rising tide raises all boats. And so if we can help the Cardano community and help other people building on Hydra, I think it just results in better outcomes for everybody.
And importantly, I was just going to add, they'll also, as part of the Catalyst ethos, right? Those will be open source, right? So as Pi mentioned, if we had to kind of shoestring those along and have them be our own internal components that weren't really meant for public consumption, they probably wouldn't be open source for a while, right? So the Catalyst funding would really allow us to take those efforts more seriously, put a lot more weight behind them, and launch them with full documentation and in open source capacity.
Yeah, I'll put links to them and your other proposals down below for anyone who wants to take a look at them. And just before we move off Hydra, there is a Hydra node live now. I know there was talk maybe a month, 2 months ago where there was a node live. What does that mean for I suppose, projects or dApps out there? Or do you know of any that are looking at integrating it or any use cases that are live yet?
Yeah, I mean, so I think what that means is that the Hydra team has kind of given the thumbs up to say, hey, we feel good about people using this on mainnet now. The Hydra node's been in a state for, at least a year where you could, in theory, run it against mainnet. I mean, we ran it against the testnet, and we ran it against private testnets. There's nothing that would have prevented us from running it against mainnet. It's just about that confidence in being able to do so with real money, so to speak. So that's what I think it means when a Hydra node is live is, hey, we are giving our rubber stamp, our thumbs up to go and build real protocols on top of it. In terms of like real world deployments of Hydra, I don't know of any yet. The kind of go-to demo that the Hydra team loves to give is they built a drawing app on top of Hydra where every pixel update is a Hydra transaction, which is pretty cool. And I know of a bunch of people building things like auction systems, or we got approached for some consulting work to build a kind of point of sale system built on Hydra that we're really excited about if that gets funding. That's with an organization called MAV 100. we're letting them handle the like publicity behind it, because we're at the end of the day just the consulting arm. It's not one thing that we're getting behind and pushing. But if that gets funding, that would also be a really exciting thing for us to build, of like more of a real world use case utilizing Hydra itself. So
okay, yeah, it's good to hear that there are projects are looking to build and use it. And one thing I did like to hear today was that in future versions, it mightn't have to be that a head needs to close every time a new person comes into it. That's something I'd heard before that was really a blocker for lots of projects using it, because once you start to bring more than 2 or 3 people into it, you don't want to have to close it down and restart every time, because you're interacting with fees on the main chain and stuff like that. So anything else on it before we move on, or any other topics that would be good to cover?
Not that I can think of.
Okay, so I suppose you mentioned they were 2 out of 7 proposals. Is there any of the other ones you want to highlight? Or
Sure, I can give kind of a 1-sentence description of the rest. So we've got the 2 Hydra proposals. We've got 2 proposals related to our smart contracts. So that is working on a new version of our smart contracts that are optimized for Plutus v2. So we're looking to get those audited. And as kind of a stretch goal, an extra proposal, we're experimenting with rewriting them in Aiken, which provides like another order of magnitude improvement that we're really excited about. Then we've got a proposal about an internal tool that we've built that's been really helpful for us in debugging our own UI and user experience and doing things like answering support tickets that we would love to kind of polish up, add some features, and open source. We've got a proposal to integrate Atala Prism with our governance solution. So somebody who is using Sundae governance could, for example, say, the people who can vote are those who have this particular credential. Maybe the Cardano Summit issues a DID credential for every attendee, and you can vote on XYZ if you have that DID credential. I think that would be pretty cool. And then the last one is our, we announced this idea before we launched called the taste test that we unfortunately didn't have time to kind of make a reality in the way that we wanted to. And MinSwap has taken that idea and run with it and been very successful with it. They call it the liquidity bootstrap event. And so we had somebody approach us, Sundae Labs, with kind of pre-built smart contracts, but they didn't want to build a product out of it. And so we were like, great, that's the like perfect marriage of talents. And so we're asking for some funding to, take that to production, build the UX and the clean user experience that we're known for around that set of contracts that they've built. And so we're really excited about that proposal as well.
okay, yeah, I'll leave links to all of them below if anyone wants to dive into them and maybe vote when the time comes. One thing, 7 proposals is a lot. Do you have the manpower to build them all? If look, they mightn't all get approved, but is there plans in place that if they did, that the team could build them?
Yeah, absolutely. So what we did is, we have this document internally that has all of the ideas that we might, possibly want to build one day. And I think that has like 40 items on it. And so what we tried to do is pick the things that are like time sensitive, where like the opportunity to build them right now is really great. And we tried to pick the right numbers so that, we're not expecting all of them to get funded. So if only some of them get funded, that's totally fine with us. That'll help a lot. But if they all do, it's like kind of right at our limit, right? It will be able to deliver on most of them, and then, scale up the team with 1 or 2 extra developers to help really push it over the line. So we tried not to overreach, just in case, like, if we submitted 15 proposals and 15 of them got funded, we'd have a lot of growing pains as a company as we doubled the size of our company. But it's kind of right on that limit where it's being ambitious and, and pushing our limits if we get them all funded. So, yeah, that's something that people ask us a lot is like, are you prepared to deliver on them all if I vote for them all? And we are.
Yeah, it's good to hear. Sometimes people throw out all these proposals thinking only 1 might get funded or 2, and then a load of them get funded, and all of a sudden they can't fulfill them. And as you know from development, sometimes scaling up the team too much at once doesn't really get things done faster. It actually gets things done slower at times when you try and bring in a lot of new elements into it. So anything else on overview on Catalyst or Sundae or anything before we close out?
No, thanks for having me on the channel. Always, enjoy your content and enjoy being able to be a part of that content. Dan, you have any thoughts?
Yeah, no, it was great to be here, and Paul, thanks for the invite. We always appreciate it.
Yeah, Dan, nice to meet you, and Pi, great to have you back on again. And I like that we don't always just concentrate on specifically Sundaeswap. We can break out into other topics too, like Hydra. We've done governance before, and we'll probably have lots of other topics going forward too. So guys, thanks very much. Anyone who got value, please do share it out. Give the video a like, comment questions or anything below. I can pass them on to Pi or get them to do a sweep through, and maybe I'll try and pick up on some of them in future videos to answer them then. Thanks for watching, guys. I'll talk to you soon.